This is Robert from Twin Peaks, and you're listening to Inspirado, Projecto. Got a light?
Aha! It appears... we have received a very important message, a very urgent message, actually, worthy of all of our attention here in the Inspirado Projecto email, which, by the way, if you have some interesting audio, some great stories, every single one of you has accumulated an astounding amount of stories through the years, email them to me. I would say keep them around the 3-minute to 4-minute mark. Send me your music. Send me whatever the heck kind of audio you want. We'll play it on the podcast. I'll make sure to give you credit. This is from email address levi4life2017@yahoo.com. LEVI 4 LIFE 2017 So here we go. Dear, please do accept my apologies. I do not wish to invade into your privacy. I had written an earlier mail to you, but without response. In my first mail, I mentioned to you about my late client who bears the same surname with you. Since his death, I've received several letters from his bank where he made a deposit of $10.5 million before his death. The bank has asked me provide his next of kin or any of his relatives who can make claim to his funds, or it will be confiscated by the bank, as I could not locate any of his relative. Hence, I contacted you for this claim since you have the same surname with him. As soon as I hear from you, I will give you the details and procedures of the transaction. Best regard, Barrister Coffee Kokuvi, Esquire. Urgent attention needed. Urgent attention needed.
And was named after Phineas Banning, a stagecoach line owner, and the father of the... Hello? Well, that was strange. That was strange.
What you just heard there was my buddy John Garside. He was at work. He works for the city of Banning. He does he records their city council meetings. He was there recording another episode of Forgotten Tales. Forgotten Tales is the name of his podcast, and also a wonderful video series. If you look on YouTube, I would suggest checking out the Electrodome. Look up the Electrodome, Forgotten Tales. So there was John Garside recording this for the city of Banning, and he heard a sound off in the distance, actually right behind him, across the hallway in a room behind him, and then there's a click. So you hear, if you go back and you re-listen to that little piece, after he's talking, you'll hear the audio go a little bit higher. That's him. That's his doing, because he wanted to zero in on the sound. So you hear like a boom and a. So those are sounds that he heard through his headphones while he was recording, and then when he went back and he re-listened to it, he brought up the volume on those. So I would suggest get some headphones on and you can hear it. And this is what's so crazy. I guess there was a cleaning crew in there one time, and they were in the room that's across the hallway from where he was recording this. They were in a room there, and they saw a stack of papers just go whoosh, just fly right off, like whoosh. Imagine the image of like remember Ghostbusters when they're doing the Dewey Decimal System. You see the librarian and all the cards from the card catalog going brrr, flying across. That's kind of, imagine that kind of image. And shortly after that, the cleaning crew quit. There's another time that he told me that someone had seen a little girl run down a hallway before, like a little ghost of a little girl. And he and I were talking about this on the phone, and it turns out that when you look at the aerial shot of this, there was a street that went right through where the building now stands. I guess the building was built in 1991 or something like that. So there was a street that went through there. So he and I were figuring out, like, oh, maybe there was a little girl who's hit by a car or something, or maybe that's her ghost that's kind of hanging out in the hallways. So, which is crazy. He's a huge Ghostbusters fan, so that was crazy. I said, wow, man, you brought the ghosts to you. Usually for these forgotten tales, he's the one who's out there looking for the answers. I told him he's kind of a cross between Indiana Jones and Sherlock Holmes. He's willing to get in there, use his deductive reasoning, figure stuff out, and that's why his videos are so successful and why people ask him to give lectures at their libraries and all these different places. So that's kind of a lesson, I think, for all of us to learn, is just dive deeply into your passion for the sake of just doing it. These are stories that he just wanted to tell. He just went out there. He wanted to find out about stuff, started digging into the stories. He wanted, just to set his heart at ease, without even realizing that he was creating the art that he wanted to see in the world. As a result of that, people saw the passion. People saw, loved the stories, and then they started coming to him, and then they started, inviting him to speak about this stuff and to show his films before, crowds of like 200 or 300 people. Then they would give him even more information, which helped him out for stuff. So it's just incredible. So I was joking with him. I said, this is kind of like that phrase, the hunter becomes the hunted, because he's out there looking for the ghosts, so to speak. He's looking for the stories of these times long gone, and now here he is in his office all by himself. No one is around anywhere near him in the hallways. He's recording this thing, and bam, there's the story right there. It's like the ghost peeked in. It's like, hey, I want to be on there too. So I just had to share that with you. If you want, go back, listen to that little segment, and listen, especially with headphones, and you can hear the little bump back there. So I will definitely share with you what happenings evolve as they unfold, and perhaps you have some answers to these questions.
Hi, Inspirado Projecto. I am cracking up laughing. Oh my gosh, you are hilarious. This is what I love about your show. This is what I love about you, because you bring laughter to me. You, like I said before, you bring a smile to my face. And I just appreciate you so much. Thank you again for calling. I really appreciate it. I know the library system has really changed. We need to be more quieter, Inspirado Projecto. You take care, and all the best to you.
Documenting everything he did. And I'm just like, my God, I've seen the photos of the boxes and the employees who now go in there with the rubber gloves, the latex gloves, and they're handling all the materials, right?
They call it Andy Warhol time capsule?
Yeah, Andy Warhol time capsules. And it's just amazing how he documented everything. I mean, really.
So usually a time capsule, you wait X amount of years and then they unearth it. But they're just calling these Andy Warhol time capsules because it's just a sealed moment in time, so to speak.
Yeah, I can't remember offhand how it worked. I want to say they kept them sealed for however long after his death.
Can you imagine
But
how
at
many
any rate,
hundreds
they
of
have gone
those,
through them.
thousands of those
Oh
he
my
probably
God.
has?
It's just incredible. Like I said, you Google Andy Warhol time capsules, and you will see the images or whatever of the employees at the, I don't know if it's a warehouse.
And they're handling it carefully.
Yeah,
with
with the rubber glove, latex
maybe even
gloves.
some in hazmat suits.
Maybe depending on the photo. But it's so inspiring. I just love that. And I remember I never really knew much about Warhol until, other than the obvious, like until my 20th birthday. And then on my 20th birthday, he died on my birthday.
Whoa, man!
And I remember it was February 22nd, '87. I turned 20 and he died. It was kind of like, whoa. And so it was all over the news, of course. And I'd always liked, the skim of what everyone knew, like the famous soup cans and the Brillo pads. And so I knew the skim, and I always liked that. And I remember seeing him on the Love Boat, thinking that was surreal.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew about his connection to the Velvet Underground, and I was really getting into the Velvet Underground in my late teens. And so it all kind of like connected, the Styx. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Styx.
And before I knew it, I was just like obsessed with Warhol and his whole thing. I just thought it was amazing, and how he sort of took this weird handoff from Duchamp in a way. I thought Marcel Duchamp, this indirect.
He was the urinal guy,
handoff.
right?
Yeah, the urinal guy, the urinal dude, the ready-made man.
Where basically anything you look at could have it be potentially art, just depending on whether you're giving it that label or not, huh?
Yeah, art or art with the air quotes or anti-art or whatever. He was, I think, with Duchamp's philosophy, he was basically trying to transcend the whole thing. Like, it doesn't have to be art and it doesn't have to be anti-art. It doesn't. It could just be, or not be. It just is or is not. Whatever. It's like it's just there.
Right.
And you can love it. You can hate it. You can be indifferent. It's all an experience.
Like I'm giving you the opportunity to define it as what you want to define it and feel about it how you want to feel about it, and come up with your own story behind it.
I always thought that was beautiful because he's not, like Duchamp wasn't hitting anyone over the head like, well, this is how you must see this urinal, or this is how you must see this bicycle wheel mounted on a stool. This is how you must view and come to think of this snow shovel that I called In Advance of the Broken Arm, which I always thought was hilarious.
Wow.
Like, in advance of the broken arm.
Oh my God.
It just goes on and on. I don't know. But anyway.
That whole period of with the factory, I mean, that is an ideal, that's something I think has always been this amazing, like the factory, you had the Beats, you had the Surrealists, you had these groups of these guys these tribes, who were just creating in all kinds of media. And Andy Warhol with his screen tests, who knows how many bazillions of hours of footage that guy took that nobody's ever seen before.
Oh, and by the way, he did one of, Speak of the Devil, he did one of Marcel Duchamp.
Oh, God, that's awesome.
Yeah, which was not too long before Duchamp passed away, actually, so that's pretty amazing. I think didn't he do one of Dali?
I think so.
Right? I know he did Bob Dylan, he did, my God, who didn't he do? He did everybody. But yeah, that's just an amazing period. Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah.
After you, my friend.
I would like may I have the turkey, bacon, and eggs?
How would you like your eggs cooked?
Scrambled, please.
Potatoes, tomatoes, or cottage cheese?
Is it possible to get fries in place of those? Cool,
And
thank you.
toast or bagel?
Oh, I'll have a bagel. That sounds good.
What kind?
Just the...
Onion, egg, sesame.
Oh, an egg bagel sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for yourself?
I am going to have the usual when we come here every 3 months. I will have the California omelet, please.
Potatoes, tomatoes, cottage cheese.
Potatoes, please.
And toast or bagel?
Toast. Wheat.
Sure.
And can we hold on to this for a little while, just in case we have ideas about... Good.
Thank you.
Plus, we need to get those desserts read by Colonel Sanders.
This is perfect timing. Are you able to?
Oh, yeah.
Pause? I have to pee.
We are here with a very, very special person, Mr. Colonel Sanders. He's going to read from the Jerry's Restaurant and Deli, established 1978, restaurant, bar, delicatessen. We deliver open late, where food and people mix. And we're going to have quite a mix here. He shall read to you from the desserts menu. Get ready, folks. You will not encounter such low prices as these desserts anywhere else in the nation.
Well, thank you very much, Kurt. And first of all, I want to wish a happy holiday to just about everybody.
Oh, that is so nice. Thank you, Colonel.
Save a couple of my ex-wives. Ho, 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 ho. Little holiday humor.
Yeah, that joke was finger-licking good.
Indeed. Christmas presents, tasty pheasants, countrysides covered with snow. Woo-hoo. Away we go. Here we are, desserts, a la mode, $2.75. Bread pudding, $5.50. Jello, $5.50. Hold the Cosby. Cannoli, $5.95. Brownie, fudge. Ooh, insert your improper joke right there. $4.50. Large chocolate chip cookie, $4.25. Large cookie, ask your server, $5.25. Hello. Please leave your message after the beep. All right, let's back it up a little bit. Why on earth would the large chocolate chip cookie be $4.25, but the large cookie, ask your server, is $5.25? Hello. Pecan tart, $6. Apple pie, $8.75. $8.75 for apple pie. That better be some damn good apple pie. Enough to give you a reach around. New York. Excuse me. My angina. New York cheesecake, $9. God damn it. That better be the best New York cheesecake this side of the Mississippi. Strawberry cheesecake, $9.50. Ooh, 50 more cents for the strawberry. What do I get with that? Perhaps a colonoscopy to go. Tiramisu, $8.25. I do believe we have an active audience. Chocolate mousse cake, $8.75. Chocolate fudge cake, $9.25. And last but not to be least, carrot cake, $9.25. Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much. You heard it here first, folks. Colonel Sanders. Oh, yeah, no. That's
sure.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I forgot to ask you. Did you ever see The Institute? Did we talk about that?
Yes, we.
It's slight
yes
documentary,
and no.
slight mockumentary.
Yeah, you told me about that a couple of years ago, and I've been so busy with Jim Morrison. That's on my list. I have a list in my notes of documentaries to watch, which I'm now adding Orson Welles.
Oh, yeah.
The two Orson Welles documentaries to that list, and The Institute is at the top. I haven't seen it.
It's really intriguing because at first you're watching it, you're going, okay, this has to be a mockumentary. Like, what these guys are talking about is so outlandish, but then you end up realizing, no, this thing actually was real. Like, this is something that these people actually truly went through and dealt with and were a part of. There's video footage that you see this crazy stuff. I think I told you I met a guy at a party one time who told me I was talking with some people about how strange Meat Clown was, and just like whatever those guys are into. And there was a guy sitting there. He goes, "Oh, that reminds me of the Jejun Institute." And I go, "Wait, from the movie The Institute?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "How do you know about the Jejun Institute?" He goes, "I did when I was in San Francisco. I went through all that crazy stuff." And then when the Institute came out, he's like, one day I was searching on Netflix and I see the Institute, and I'm like, oh, this is a neat documentary. And he goes, as I'm watching it, I'm like, holy cow, this is that weird thing that I had been a part of. He's talking about how when he was out there visiting his friend in San Francisco, his friend goes, oh, you want to do something interesting? go to this particular building, go to the receptionist, tell them you want to go to room number, whatever, 348 or whatever, and they'll tell you what to do at that point. The receptionist sends him up an elevator. He walks down this long hallway, opens up the door, just like in the Institute. There's a comfy chair, there's a TV. It's a very, set-dressed little room, and there's a VHS in there, and he presses play in the TV. It talks to him about Jejune Institute, and then in the corner of the chair, there was a little sort of like a little worksheet of little things, little assignments that he could do. Things where basically he had to go to a phone booth at a certain time. I mean, while he was there, the phone would ring and he'd receive instructions. And I mean, it was so interesting. The fact that, like, to make a living art project like that and to include people from just the world who are just game for it, or just like, oh, I like Easter eggs. Okay, let me follow this rabbit hole.
That's awesome. Yeah, and oddly, I mean, I can't even keep track of time anymore. Like, I think, did I see that, or am I remembering you and I talking about it like a year or two ago? I think I would remember if I saw it. I know I wanted to see it. It's on my list because people are always saying, "Oh, have you seen this film? Have you seen this doc?" And it's like a running joke now where I'm like, no, and no, because I've been so busy with my own Morrison film.
Oh yeah.
But man, that sounds amazing. I look forward to it at any rate.
Does it feel great? Like, I mean, after all this time, to finally zipper up kind of finally get the movie finished.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely. I don't have the words. Like I said, at one point, I'm sitting there, and it all comes down to you're looking at it on a hard drive, which is safely ensconced away. At a remote location.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, it's like 6 years and 5 months of my life. Who planned on that? It was going to be a 2-hour film, documentary, and then it evolved into a six-hour docu-series.
Yeah, it's like David Lynch's Dune. When he made Dune, it was like a 6-hour film. He's like, well, we could chop it up into pieces, or it would work best as like a TV show. They're like, no, David, no, it's got to be 2 hours. And so as a result, people are like, what the hell? That makes no sense. And it's like no one ever gets to see the other side of it, of like what it I mean, how crazy would that be if someday that version gets released? Well, because of all the criticism, that's when David Lynch put his name on it as Alan Smithy. Which I was talking with my buddy Chris about this the other day. Like, Alan Smithy is responsible for producing, editing, doing the music of so many movies out there. Alan Smithy is that name that's just given out, where if you don't want to have your name associated, okay, it's Alan Smithy.
Oh yeah, didn't someone make a doc about the code name Alan Smithy?
Oh, if they did, I need to watch it.
Or I want to say something was done about the long-standing tradition of Alan Smithy.
Oh my God!
A few years ago already, but again, I can't recall.
I think it'd be hilarious. I was talking with my buddy Chris about how funny it would be if, like, to come forward as Alan Smithy and say, I am responsible for creating all these films, and I'm very proud of them. They were so far ahead of their time, it's going to take another 30 years before people really, truly appreciate their genius.
I'd like to know who came up with Alan Smithy.
Yeah, oh right? Yeah.
Where is that individual?
Yeah.
Out there in the ether. I assume that was that was way pre-internet, right? Like, I love that notion, too. I was talking to someone recently about the pre-internet age, like how urban legends and dirty jokes, like how they were passed on down the generations, like campfire stories.
Yeah.
Right. Like pre-internet, pre-smartphone.
Yeah.
How were these things transmitted? I guess it started around campfires. And bars, people sitting in bars, and then the next thing you know, Joe Blow and John Doe are sitting in a bar in North Dakota, and then one of them gets on a flight and goes to Tucson, and then they tell this dirty joke that they learned at the bar in Tucson, and then that guy travels up to Seattle, and he tells them that he flies to Oahu.
It's like they carry that story with them. Right? They carry those jokes with them wherever they go.
And it's fun to think of that sort of underground network of legends and myths and jokes and stuff, and here we are.
Would it be too soon for me to ask Jennifer Abel if I could play her father in a movie? I would love to be Alan. I know they did the documentary, but shit, man, I would love to become Alan Abel for his a movie about it.
To answer you honestly, I'm looking at my watch. It's too soon, and hold on. Now it's time. Now it's time.
Now it's time.
I would ask her right now. That's amazing. I would pay damn good money to see you play.
That would be so fun.
Play Alan.
Oh my God, that would be so fun.
Now that's so fun to think about too, because I remember when he, when he allegedly passed away, you and I, of course, instantly went there and said, Is Alan Abel pulling an Alan Abel?
Yeah.
Is he is he riffing on his own hoax of all those years ago? But then you think of his age and his health. I mean, I know I had heard he wasn't in the greatest health, sadly, but he had an amazing. If he did really die, he had an amazing long life. But again, at the risk of sounding like a tinfoil hat wielding idiot, and assuming everyone faked their death. Because for the record, the only people I think faked their death were Jim Morrison and Andy Kaufman. That's it. I've said that for years. If anyone else beyond those two,
and the only one who actually that way, if a phone call does come through or something like that, it won't throw out the recording. It'll hold it there.
Yeah,
which is good.
That's awesome.
God, it would be so much fun. Oh, I have this idea for I don't know if I ever told you my idea for the. Well, I told you that I'm still piecing together now. Before you move out to Joshua Tree, and after you move out to Joshua Tree, I'd like to shoot scenes. If you wouldn't mind, would you mind being my cameraman? Because I don't have a camera person to shoot the scenes of me to do the things that I need to do.
For playing Alan Abel?
I'm sorry, for this particular Pagani film that I'm putting together with Pagani.
If my schedule with Morrison, because I don't know what's going to happen once the deal is sealed. I don't know what's going to happen in terms of me doing promotion and all the legwork.
All right, that's okay. I'm just throwing it out there.
But if I can do it, I would be there in a heartbeat.
Now I have this idea that's aside. That's not the idea that I'm doing with Pagani. But I had this idea of how interesting, like a movie called Mr. Pagani. And I guess it depends whether actually Bob plays this character or not. But I don't know if I ever told you about this, but I had this idea of, because he kind of prides himself as being kind of a cranky guy, kind of like,
curmudgeon?
Yeah, kind of being this curmudgeon. And so we play off that idea of him, he's got his particular gripes about specific things, and he ends up going to maybe a carnival is in town, and he just gets out of the house and decides to go up there, and he goes into the fun house. And then as he's in the funhouse, he walks into the room full of mirrors. And he's looking around and he starts seeing all of these different sizes and shapes of him, all these different, wiggly and wobbly and all kinds of different sizes. And when he exits the funhouse, everybody in his environment looks like him.
Ooh.
Everybody. So it's in a sense he's gone into this dimension. In a sense he's gone into the room full of mirrors, and now he's confronted with his own reflections. Now when he's out there in the world, each and every single one of these people, I'm talking about little people, I'm talking about kids, I'm talking about all kinds of different shapes and sizes, everybody, women, men, they all have his face. We get this prosthetic of his face, and these people are wearing it. And
it puts a whole new spin on Lost in the Funhouse.
Yeah. So now he, in a sense, is confronted with these different aspects of himself. So each of those aspects are now found to be saying specific things that he was saying that the audience harkens back and remembers hearing him say before he went into the funhouse. So now everybody in his environment, in a sense, it's like taking your own... Remember we were talking about earlier, like, the way that people will project their view out into the world. Like if they're worried and scared and timid all the time and worry warts and always complaining, well, they're going to look at the world like that through their lens. So now you got Pagani, who's walking around out there, and he's like, and he starts looking around. He's, he notices something is a little strange here, and everybody looks like him, and they're all echoing back to him his own thoughts, his own sentiments, and everything like that. So now what it does is it makes him confront him. It's like looking at the man in the mirror. He's confronted with himself, with his own gripes, his own complaints, his own frictions on certain things. So now,
Looking at the man in the mirror.
oh my God, that'd be great. We could do a version of him singing it while he's there in the fun house. Like, I'm looking at the man in the mirror.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard his voice, but I
That'd be
imagine
great.
it being very curmudgeon-like.
And then him doing some funny little dance. And then, so when he comes out, now everybody is using the same gripes and complaints. And now, it's like, now he's confronted with, oh, is this a belief that I want to hold on to? Is this something that, how is it making me feel to hear all these others say this stuff? So little by little, it's almost a film of like, where he now starts to learn how to, at first, it's like, it's hard, because he's just like, why is everybody complaining all the time? He's not even realizing that it's his own feedback back to himself. It's his own, curmudgeon-y stuff that's echoing back at him. And so now, what happens is, little by little, he starts making amends. Not that he had any friction with them, so to speak, but he's confronted with that friction of his own, his own nature. So little by little, he starts like finding the agreements with each of these particular characters as he's living his life, and maybe within this world, he ends up, meeting a nice woman who actually looks like him. He ends up having these kids, so it turns into this whole, like, years and years and years. And then what happens is, that circus comes back to town. He decides to go back into the circus, decides to go back into the funhouse, looks back into a room full of mirrors. When he exits, bam! It's back on the same exact day that he first entered it.
Oh, so he's like in a loop?
Bam! So he now, in a sense, the spell has been broken. Now, he's no longer being curmudgeon-y about any of these issues that he was before. Now he's learned a way to get past these sort of, I don't know, whatever might be menial issues or things that like are just really not worth the weight that some of us give to them. And now he's sort of broken the spell. And now he's back to square one. He exits the place, and then there's his original wife or kids or who knows what. They're like, Dad, we just had a fun time on the, and it's back to how it was when he first entered.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I like the idea that when he's in the loop, I like the image of him getting into an argument with himself.
Yeah.
But like in a different guise, like him as a 6-year-old child, or
yes,
or like a 102-year-old man, or a woman who is like a parking ticket reader.
Oh yeah.
Or what I call them, right?
Like imagine that, like some little kid who's got this like, maybe like a cynical mindset. Like a little kid. It's like, come on, you're like 8 years old. You got a whole life ahead of you. They're like, geez, all these taxes, or whatever it is that the kid would be complaining about.
Exactly. I like that.
And even if, it could be a completely different name eventually, but whether I use Bob Pagani or not, but that just popped into my brain, like thinking, wow, that would be pretty cool. Like, very few times, just out of, I think, congeniality, very few times people will give us the feedback of the very few times when people echo back to us, in other words, give us back our own medicine. And we see what happens when we give people back their own medicine. They don't like it one bit. Because they're like, wow, you're being a jerk. I'm just feeding to you the same words that you just gave to me yesterday. And you don't like it, so why are you putting that out there? So very few times will people actually confront, unless you're like a Joan Rivers type of person who just blah, 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 they're just saying this stuff that, they don't care about the repercussions of getting yelled back at or whatever. But like, the idea of just being congenial, kind of letting people, if there's a jerk, lot of times you just let them be a jerk sometimes, or if they're, because you're like, I don't want to really say anything to them. But it's interesting because if they had heard that, if they realized what kind of effect that they had on their world, maybe they would dial back the way that they're treating people in certain ways. If they could see the path that they've carved throughout their life and the legacy that they're living. Because, wherever we're going, we're leaving that specific vibe, we're leaving that kind of energy. Kind of like we were harking back to what you said earlier, like a joke that someone has told in a bar in Canada. Now, that person flies back home to, in Nebraska or whatever. Now they're telling that same joke. Now that's around in Nebraska. Now those people go off and, and it just keeps spreading.
They go on a camping trip and they tell it around the fire, and then they tell it at work over the water cooler.
Yeah.
In the pre-internet smartphone day.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of times, our ghost or our spirit will reach a particular location before we ourselves even get there. I mean, how many times have there been those times where you show up somewhere, someone's like, oh my God, Jeff, you that guy. Okay, so you're the one who's working on the Jim Morrison documentary. Oh my God, that's so great. I heard so much about you, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, that's so crazy. Like now they've actually met you in person. They've heard about your spirit, and now imagine if they're like, oh, you're that guy Jeff who's always like kicking people in the balls. Just stay away from me. Like I've heard a lot about you, you jerk.
Your ball kicker.
Yeah, you ball kicker. It's like one of those things where it's like either way we're leaving a legacy behind. So, what a lot of folks will say, oh, I don't care what they think about me. Well, if you heard the immediate feedback from everybody and they dished back to you the vibes that you put out there, you might start caring about how people view you. You might start figuring out the equalization of whether you should yell at your server or not, whether you should treat that the garbage man in that terrible way or not, or what have you. So it'd be an interesting thing. It'd be like an immediate feedback kind of thing. It's like when we go to when we're there, like in an area where you go and then you hear that echo back to you. That immediacy. Sometimes we don't get that immediacy. Sometimes it takes a while until we hear that echo come back to us.
Like a boomerang.
Yeah, the boomerang comes back to you. Sometimes it goes on a little bit of a journey. Sometimes you don't know if it's going to come back to you. So that idea came into my mind. I'm like, whoa, wouldn't it be interesting to be a person who's confronted with their own gripes, their own complaints, their own whatever. I mean, imagine if, like you were saying earlier about being, you feel anxiety. I feel anxiety a lot too. Now imagine if I were to then come out into a world where everybody's feeding back to me all of their anxiety. I might go, uh-oh, that reminds me of what the heck I've got going around in here. If I were to lower the volume on that, would the volume of this around me lower as well? That might be an interesting.
Oh yeah, anxiety is a whole other can of worms. I think everyone has it to varying degrees, because like you and I were saying earlier, how can you, like I think anxiety at its core is what? You're clearly putting one step ahead, like, oh, what am I doing next Thursday? I have to go to the grocery store, or whatever. So if you're not planning ahead to some degree, then you're just completely winging it, and it's lovely to talk about. I mean, it's just my opinion, but it's lovely to talk about being in the moment, being very zen, and living only for the moment. And I think in theory and on paper that always sounds wonderful and almost blissful. But I think the practical reality of day-to-day life, you got to have, clearly you have to have some sort of plan, loose plan. And like I was telling you, I think the trick for me is to strike that balance between being in the moment and then also having a loose template. Okay, what's going on next Tuesday? Oh yeah, I have to bring my car to the mechanic, or whatever it is. Like, just practical day-to-day functioning, of your schedule.
Now something just your schedule. Now something just popped in my brain. Do you think that I guess I'm. Do you think the feelings that that are attached to that future event are usually is it usually a feeling of like, oh God, what if it goes wrong type of thing, or because I know with my anxiety there's that idea of like, oh, what if it all just derails, and there's that kind of like anxiety aspect. Now, anxiety is the opposite side of the coin of excitement. It's the same thing, it's just translated into a different kind of vibe. It's the same kind of thing. So we could be excited about the future or anxious about it to be here now, I guess. I know sometimes when I think about the anxiety, it's that either I don't really want to do that thing in the future, or whoa, I've really built this project up to be big in my mind, like screenplay ideas, for instance, or I don't know, concept albums or something, that like, oh gosh, there's a lot to get through. Is there that vibe that's ever attached to it for you, or what do you think it might be that could break the spell of anxiety?
Oh God, I mean, so many ways to. One thing that popped in my brain when you were first, putting that out there, I think a lot of it depends on honestly, like where you're at in your life, like even chronologically, like I think for me, I'm going to turn 52 in a few weeks, and while I don't feel like what I imagined 52 might have been like when I was 12 or 22, or you know what I mean, it's still a marker in your life, and we all know the one thing we can all agree on: we're all going to die. Trying to remember, I heard Mark Maron interview a guy recently, I think it was on the WTF podcast, where he said, well, one thing we can all agree on, we're all going to die. Or I can't remember what it was, but it was really funny. So, when you've got this limited scope, the older you get, you don't want to see it as, what do you want to do? See it as half, glass half empty, glass half full, that kind of thing. I don't know, but I think that, given your age, given your health, given your relationship stat, there's so many factors, like things that contribute, your job situation, like, that contribute to where you're at, So, and again, I think the anxiety is always there. It's just a question of what's the degree pattern, you know what I mean? Like, is this working for me or against me? Am I allowing this to work for me or against me? Because I think you have a choice to some degree.
Yeah.
It's so subjective, you know what I mean? Like, everyone has their own situation, but I think everyone has that to some degree within them, anxiety. And I think it has such a negative connotation in society. You just say the word, and people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. No, who wants to talk about that? Who wants to feel that? Who wants to even think about it? It's a real drag. So I think maybe a big part of it is just sort of deconstructing it and diffusing the power and just normalizing it, maybe.
It's interesting because
I also might add, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So who knows?
Well, there's that idea that like the anxiety, the excitement, that harkens back to our fight or flight patterns.
Oh yeah.
The anxiety is like, oh God, something's gonna kill me. Is something gonna kill me? Is something gonna eat me? I just heard a loud noise. Oh God, I just gotta get the hell out of here.
It's almost like that primordial, like that primitive instinct, deep down, like, oh, what's this gonna do to me?
Right. We either run away or run towards it.
Yeah.
And it's what's interesting. Even if you had anxiety through this process of creating before the end, you dialed in. Your excitement for telling the story outweighed the anxiety of like, oh God, what if this goes wrong? Or oh gosh, what if I don't find these people or whatever? Because I'm sure there was anxieties in the beginning where you're like, oh gosh, I would love to interview this person. Oh, what if I never get that person? Oh, I'd love it. And then guess what? Unexpectedly, years down the line, something pops in your email address, or you stumble across someone at a coffee shop, or who knows what, that's that person that you never even thought that you'd ever get a chance to interview. And it's like, how the heck? It's like so crazy how the universe kind of talk about the boomerang. It's like you went, "Zhip, zhip, zhip. Here's my intention. I really would like for that to happen," and then it just appeared at just the right time.
Here's and that's very dead on. Here's an encapsulation of that just popped in my brain when you said that. So as we sit here at Jerry's Deli in Studio City, Ventura Boulevard, lovely sunny day in December. Somewhere up here in the hills, Jim Morrison's physician, if he's still with us, lives somewhere within a couple of minutes of us. And I tried like hell to interview this guy. I contacted him multiple times, email, phone call, carrier pigeon, whatever I could do. And I finally got through to him, and he was wonderful. He was very forthcoming and apologetic for sort of giving me the stiff arm, but he wanted to, as many of those people did, they wanted to test me and see, well, who are you? And are you for real? Because they meet a lot of fly-by-night type people, and I can understand and respect that. So I passed the test, right? And I was grateful for that. But in the end, ironically, he didn't give me the interview. So he gave it to me informally over the phone, but he did not want to go on the record on camera, and he said, "Don't take it personally." And a number of principals told me the same thing. Don't take it personally. I don't do this for anyone. It's just what they've just decided, what they've chosen. And I was used to it at that point. So on the one hand, he gave me this amazing information, shared his time and energy with me, and I'll always be grateful for that. On the other hand, he said, "Well, I'm not going to let you put it in your movie, your documentary." So right there is encapsulated this sort of balance, right, between the excitement and the anxiety, flip side of the coin. You know? So maybe that's life in a nutshell. I don't know, and you just, what can you do other than maybe roll with it and be grateful for it? It's part of your experience. I don't know.
What's interesting, I'd love to know. Like you said, these people go, I don't just do it for anybody. I would love to know who the ideal anybody is that they would do that for. It'd be interesting to know who that anybody is. Do they need Steven Spielberg to come up and interview him? Do they need, what is that anybody?
Well, that's where the cynicism kicks in. From having lived in Hollywood for so long. Yeah. Like, okay, yeah, if I were Spielberg, would you be like, "Oh shit, I'll talk to you right now. Hey, bring the camera over." You know what I mean? Because of his reputation, his funding, his obvious talent. Excuse me. But on the other hand, I think I'd like to believe that with a guy like that, because I think he was like 90 years old when I spoke with him a few years ago. I think he had just, he'd basically been like, "I've been there, done that. Don't want to go there," and that's his choice, and I respect it. So. But who knows? If Spielberg came along, Michael Moore, I don't know, someone, I'll never know.
I guess it's my own, we were talking about projection earlier. I guess it's like and possibly my own ego of the idea of like, okay, here's a story to tell. Someone is presenting me this opportunity with a story to tell that, especially if I'm 90 years old, I might not be able to tell again, and how fun would that be to be able to have it included in this wonderful project. I guess it's just my own ego talking, Like, I'm thinking, like, holy cow, these people have stories to tell. How often, and then let's say, once BTE comes out, who wants to live with the regret of going, God, I wish I would have talked with that guy?
I'm right with you, because, there's that line, too, of, your ego, healthy ego that we all have versus what? Unhealthy ego. There's a balancing act right there. Maybe it all comes down to balance, every portion of our persona, our experience, I don't know, like a balancing act or a tightrope walk. Yeah. But yeah, I played that card with that guy. I remember saying, "You are one of the last living conduits to Jim Morrison." I think historically it's important for you to share your story. If not with me, then hopefully someone. But and to try to tactfully put across this person is of a a certain age. I mean, without coming out and saying, "Hey, dude, you're 90. Let's do this now."
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Or who
Who
knows?
knows when the next Jim Morrison documentarian is going to come around and ask you questions, sir?
Right.
Yeah.
So selfishly, I'd like to think in a healthy way, I was trying to impart to him, could we please do this for posterity's sake, for Jim's legacy, to study him for future generations, that kind of thing. You are his physician. You were his physician throughout the entire time, 1965, 66. I know he came in right when they signed with the lecture, I guess, and was with him until he went to Paris in 1971. So he was his doctor, physician. But again, he had his choice, and I had to respect it.
Yeah.
But there were lots of guys like that, many men and women. Oh, please, And I know these people are all Morrison's age. He would have just turned 75 years old this past Saturday, December 8th, 2018. So we were talking, his colleagues are all in that zone, mid-70s, give or take. I don't know, while the planet's still spinning, can we go on the record? And,
and I guess that's the other thing too, is that I need to put myself in the shoes of the idea that, like you're saying, maybe a lot of them are jaded. Maybe a lot of them have been approached in similar ways. Maybe, and then nothing came about of those projects, because that's something that happens so often with projects that get started. I mean, Kaufman Lives, for instance, but like the idea of this thing gets started and it's like you're hoping that it's got steam, it's got momentum, it's going to keep moving, it's going to keep grooving, it's going to give birth, but then something happens and then the brakes are put on it. And
I think I told you on Inspirado Projecto, I think I shared it there, or maybe it was on the podcast at one point. I won't go into the whole story, but Jack Holzman, there's another guy who's in his, he's well into his 80s now, I think. I had to jump through many hoops to get to him. And he's the guy who signed the Doors. He's the guy who, the founder of Elektra Records. I mean, he's a legendary figure in music and art, culture. And I totally understand. He was like, well, who the hell are you? Where are you coming from? Ironically, that was my pitch, was I'm not your garden variety corporate documentary filmmaker. I'm working outside the Hollywood system. I may live there, but I'm working outside of it because I'm trying to get to the truth, and not being about branding and media image and PR and all that stuff. So I hope that he would find that refreshing. At any rate, he finally, unlike Jim's physician, Jack Holzman finally did let me have an interview, but oh man, I even had to endure him yelling at me, curmudgeon-like, who the hell are you?
oh my God.
And I was like, oh, did I catch you on a bad day? I remember it was a rainy day, one of those rare rainy days in LA.
Man.
I was like, is it because of the rain? And no, he said, he goes, he apologized, and he said, I hope you understand, I have to weed through so many people, almost daily, who want his time. They want to interview with him, they want to write an article about him and Jim, the Doors, whatever, and it's exhausting, so he wanted to know that I was the real deal, and I respect that.
That's incredible. I'm so glad that you were able to get all the people that you did throughout all the years, and some of them gave you leads to other people, or you just would stumble upon stuff with your detective work. You would just, like Sherlock Holmes, you would just, figure stuff out.
Oh, a lot of it was people just being so, honestly, like really genuinely kind. I mean, the majority of the situations I found myself in, everyone was so helpful. Like, oh, you got the email for this guy? Here it is. Boom. You got this guy's phone number? Yeah, you got to talk to this woman. She knew Morrison. Boom.
Wow.
And they didn't have to do that. But I think once they knew that I was not messing around, they would, pull these things out of their hats, and I'll always be grateful for that. And yeah, a lot of it was detective work, clawing away, researching stuff, and I love that. That's one of honestly, I think my favorite part of the process is the research. Laying all that groundwork and setting up the interviews and communicating with these people and hearing their stories and their experiences is just fascinating to me, because you're documenting history, you know, and hopefully the truth of what really happened, you know.
Yeah, I think your your earnestness and your authenticity, I think that really, you know, it shines through, and because you didn't have like the Hollywood sheen to it, the you know, that shallow aspect, that you really wanted to dig down and find out the true stories. I think maybe that probably lit the fire in some of these folks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's funny. A lot of people, I think, really responded to that, and a small handful chose to go the other way. But those people, I know, with full authority, are you know, have an agenda that is part of that sheen you mentioned. And you know, I respect that. That's their angle. You know, that's where they're going, and that's fine. I think the world's big enough that we can coexist. I think the irony in the end, and I've said this many times. I think I said this when I was interviewed on Coast to Coast like 2 years ago. The irony in the end is that we're all promoting Jim and the Doors. We're all trying to show our truth, or Jim's truth, our truth about Jim, you know. So in the end, it's like we're all really sort of on the same team anyway.
Yeah.
So shouldn't we support each other?
Yeah.
Like, life's too short to bicker and try to cut each other down, you know. It's like, that's just bullshit, you know. Let's work together, people.
There you have it. Let's work together, people.